Good afternoon and welcome to Levy Digital Desk. I'm your host, Sarah Good. Today we're going to be speaking about the Listeria outbreak coming from Boar's Head products. You might have heard about that in the last few weeks. The recall has sort of expanded now, including millions of pounds of Boar's Head meat products, deli products. It started with liverwurst and then expanded into all of their deli products. So if those are in your fridge, we're going to talk about what you should do about that. We're going to talk about what Listeria is and what you need to know to keep you and your family safe. We have Rishi Drolia, a PhD from ODU, with us today with biological sciences, and he's going to talk about what Listeria is. You might have seen him on Wavy TV just on earlier this week, talking about what this is and sort of what to watch out for and who it impacts the most. So I'm going to bring him on now. Dr. Drolia, thanks so much for joining us this morning, or this afternoon, excuse me. The morning flew by.
Thank you, Sarah.
Just to start, I think people are familiar with these recalls. They're familiar with hearing about Listeria outbreaks. However, this one definitely reaches close to home for us here in Virginia. Jarrett, it's not too far, but it is in the state. That's where a lot of those Boar's Head meat products are coming from. Boar's Head also, huge brand. We know a lot of people in our viewing area too. That is common in their fridge as well as nationwide. Now the outbreak's in 13 states. And we also just had one person die from the outbreak here in Virginia. Just what were your first thoughts hearing about the deli meats being recalled due to this Listeria outbreak?
First thoughts, I would say it is not uncommon to find Listeria, especially in the food chain. And deli meat provides the perfect environment for Listeria to be there. So I was not surprised with the outbreak, given the impact of the outbreak and so much of meat being recalled, millions of pounds of meat being recalled, 13 states. And here in Hampton Roads, we've already seen a death. There's two other deaths in, I think it's in New Jersey and Illinois. And so 43 people have been hospitalized, 3 are declared dead. And so it is concerning.
And to actually have an illness related to Listeria and to be impacted by it, maybe they are not on the end of the spectrum yet where they're having serious complications, but isn't it all serious if you are impacted by Listeria?
Yes. So normal individuals who are immunocompetent are not actually getting Listeria into the bloodstream. So they will have the Listeria restricted to their gut, and Listeria will shed out from the fecal tract if that person is healthy. But then the major population that is affected by Listeria is young, elderly, pregnant, and immunocompromised. And so if you are one of those population who are immunocompromised, HIV, kidney transplants, anti-inflammatory drugs, that is when you are in the risk population of Listeria, and pregnancy being one of them as well. And so that is when Listeria crosses the bloodstream, it gets into the bloodstream and then attacks the target organs, the liver, the spleen, and then the secondary target organs, the brain, as well as in pregnant women, it also crosses the placenta. So that is when it becomes concerning, a 94% hospitalization rates. So almost I was hearing that out of the 43 who are infected, all of them are hospitalized.
Wow. That's a huge statistic. And to say, that 94, or sorry, you said 99, 94%?
Hospitalization rate.
Wow. I mean, we hear about sicknesses, we hear about bacterial infections, maybe where you can get an antibiotic quickly and have that, support your system. But to have to go to a hospital to treat this already, raises the bar of what this illness means.
Yes. So once it is in the bloodstream, majority of the patients have to get hospitalized and get IV antibiotics. Majority of the cases are also unreported. And so what we're seeing here is probably not the best statistics we have yet, because people who got the Listeria restricted into the gut, they never felt the symptoms because it never came to the bloodstream. And so many of those cases are underreported. So the concerning fact here is 30% death and 94% hospitalization rate. The food industry is also hugely affected. About statistics say about $2.8 billion is what it
Wow.
takes for yearly annual cost of just hospitalization and at the food industry.
Wow. And that's, we know, is not just impacting Boar's Head, but is impacting the retailers that purchase the products and are selling the products.
That is absolutely correct. And so it is also affecting all the grocery stores. When there is a recall, they have to get rid of the food in the food supply chain. And so that is impacting everyone from where it is manufactured to where it is sold to people who consume.
And I know we're talking about deli meat and deli products right now, but Listeria is not only in deli meat and deli products, right? The bacteria can be in fruits and vegetables, other items at the grocery store.
That is absolutely correct. So the unique thing about Listeria, it really has a very uh, unique ability to withstand harsh conditions. And our food, as such, has really harsh conditions. If you see food has low pH, it is refrigerated, some of them are frozen, some of them are at warm temperatures, but still Listeria can survive that acidic environment, low pH, high salt concentration environment. And so because of this unique ability of this bacteria to kind of express the factors it needs to survive in that harsh environment, it just is difficult to control. So how many ever measures you take at the food manufacturing plant, the food processing plant, the fact that the food till the time it comes from the farm to the fork, it is being processed. And there is so many ways that listeria can be there. So the United States has zero tolerance towards listeria in food. And that is one of the measures that USDA, FSIS, the Food Safety Inspection Services has taken to make sure that listeria is contained. So whenever there's a pathogen or listeria detected in the food, it is recalled immediately. But few countries, especially in Europe as well as Canada, where again there's an outbreak going on right now with plant-based milk with listeria. Three have been declared dead in Canada as well. Just around the same time the outbreak is going on. Um, Canada still has some allowable limits of listeria in food chain. So especially ready-to-eat meats, yes, it can. Now, because of this unique ability, it can survive in ice creams, cantaloupes, uh, enoki mushrooms. There was a recent recall in walnuts. So powdered infant formula, which is really dry environment, low water activity environment. So that is the reason it is associated with any and every food, vegetables, unpasteurized milk, cheese, queso fresco. So the precautionary measures are washing the food, just making sure that you scrub the raw vegetables that you consume, and the best practice is to cook, is to heat up your meats.
Right, not eating them, raw. Obviously, we know in some cases, especially, meats like steak, obviously people have different temperature preferences, but heating those up. I did want to ask though, you're talking about plant-based milks, you're talking about things that usually come in containers, to the grocery store, to your home. And, as somebody purchasing the goods, I think you assume as the consumer that it's safe, it's properly handled and bottled up, and those products you don't even have to worry about. So I do think it's scary, with some of these freezer products, with some of, whether it's a milk based product, to then have to think twice maybe about, doing research or understanding what the product is, what their cleaning process is before you bring it into your home.
Right. So the food industry takes a lot of measures. There are safety inspections at the food industry to make sure that our food is safe. Given that this bacteria can withstand all these conditions, it is very difficult to control it. And so, yes, there are batches testing going on at the industry where the batches that have been shipped out to the grocery stores, they are tested. But till the time that the test comes out positive or the results come out, they have already been in the food supply
I see.
chain.
So that's why we're in the situation here where they weren't able to recall these products or not even put them on the shelves before, people ended up having this illness.
Exactly. And so the testing time is still one of the major research areas, how we can shorten the detection time in food for Listeria so that we can immediately recall the food once we know that the food has been tested positive.
Wow. And I want to say too, there's one comment asking about things like baby food, asking about things like, I imagine, like an applesauce and things like that. You're relying on the food company, you're relying on the person manufacturing it to make those necessary steps, right? So you're really putting trust in the, producer.
Yes, that
Okay.
is absolutely correct. So the producer has a lot of responsibility because of the fact that it is directly affecting common people. And so yes, one of the suggestions would be to buy products from trustworthy companies. But again, you never know. This can happen at anybody's home. Um, Best measures are precautionary. Healthy immune system is important, but then if you are amongst the immunocompromised group, then restricting from eating raw meats, unpasteurized milk, queso fresco, uh, uh, cheese, which are made from unpasteurized milk. Although recently we've been hearing more also that even pasteurized milk can contain some of these pathogens. And so just refraining and cooking every product. So in the United States, we know the food is highly processed. We want to take it out of the refrigerator, not even have to microwave it and consume it. Majority of other countries would prefer to cook their food. And if we take those precautionary measures, the cases can be restricted.
And I just want to repeat for somebody in the chat is asking what's currently infected. The current recall is for boar's head meat products. So I don't want that to be confused with deli products across the spectrum. It is boar's head, liverwurst is how it started, and then expanded into all of their deli products. So just for anyone watching this right now, I just want to be clear that that's what's currently infected. In terms of right care, you talked about proper sanitation, at least on the consumer side. What are ways that we should be aware of washing, especially those fresh products, those fresh vegetables and fruit in our own home? I think people do a quick, rinse under the water. We've seen it, a quick wipe off, and then they put it in that produce bowl or put it in their fridge. Should we be, abiding by different standards in terms of, are there soaps you can use, do you rinse it with, I've seen vinegar rinses before, for example, online. What are some of those ways we can at least try to mitigate the risk with those fresh produce items?
Right. So uh, the fresh produce items, especially just raw vegetables, the best way is to scrub it just with water under the sink. Uh, Now, with meat, if you were talking about chicken that you're consuming, of course, we are not consuming that raw, we're cooking it. But sometimes the poultry products will also be contaminated with Listeria. And the best way is to take it out of the bag and cook it without the need of washing it. And so when you wash those products that are uncooked and it comes to the sink and there is a possibility of cross-contaminating it, which likely, if you would have to cook that product, would have killed the pathogen
I
or in
see. So you don't want it in your space that you're doing other things. You don't want your raw meat to be where you're washing your fruits and vegetables or you're washing your hands, accidentally touching the faucet.
right. Cross-contamination is the biggest issue here. So we have to make sure that the knives or the cutting boards that we touch the meat with, should not cross-contaminate other products, either in our refrigerator or at our kitchen. We also can use, like you mentioned, vinegar. About 5% concentration of vinegar is something that will kill Listeria. But other than that, there are other disinfectants like hydrogen peroxide at 3% can be used in the kitchen, not in the food, just cleaning the kitchen countertops. So those are some of the precautionary measures, but restricting food that is consumed raw is one of the biggest measures. Now, you mentioned about powdered infant formula. I guess there have been outbreaks with other pathogens like Chronobacter, even with Listeria, Salmonella, with powdered infant formula, and that is again really unfortunate because we are trusting on the company and it does happen. But again, it is not uh, that the companies are not taking enough measures. They are making sure our food supply chain remains safe. The food safety is the foremost importance to those companies, but it is just the, the the way these pathogens survive in harsh conditions.
Right. And their survivability, I think we just spoke about it, but the freezer, the fridge, in transition of, all of this travel time and it still doesn't die, it still lingers. I think that is to say that it obviously is such a strong bacteria.
That is correct. And so we have seen in the past ice cream outbreaks with Listeria, and so it is not something we have not heard. We've also seen outbreaks with cold cuts and at vegetables that are frozen. We also see that. So the problem is that it can survive these conditions and it does come to the food supply chain, even though we take absolute measures. There are so many ways the industry can be exposed to, whether it is from the water supply they're using, the raw meat that is coming from the farmers, whether it is the piping. These bacteria can also form biofilms, and these biofilms are really kind of sturdy bacterial cells building on top of each other. And so even if the industry is taking measures to scrub the belts, the chains, it still is hiding out there and can come into the food supply chain at any time.
Right. And I just want to make sure, for everyday use, obviously we're going into school too. Lunch meat, super easy thing to throw in your kid's lunchbox. I mean, we know it. It's a really easy, ready to go meal. In terms of being careful about products and being healthy, I mean, if you are not in that category of, people that are immunosuppressed, you're not pregnant, you're not over a certain age, that, it makes it more difficult to recover from this. Is just buying everyday lunch meat, you should go ahead and buy it, right? This should not scare you. Or should you find other options, perhaps cooking your own, turkey meat, for example, or, finding other ways to put that, protein in?
Now, that's a good question. And so, yes, it is surprising that even though with all these measures there is outbreaks, but that should not restrict us from buying these products. The beauty of this whole food supply chain is that it is really inspected by the USDA inspectors, and so every batch they're selling, they are tested, but there may be a food outbreak in the middle, which we cannot control. So if you are in that risk group, it is highly recommended that you cook your meat, either microwave it just before consuming it. So just a quick microwave that gets the temperature to about 165, smoking kind of meat that you see from the microwave once it comes out, and then you consume it. That is much safer. And that also I would recommend for those who are immunocompromised. For those people who are healthy adults, they are still okay to consume the meat. Ideally, they should heat it. If not, then the food industry has taken measures to test the batches of the meats and make sure that it is not contaminated.
Well, I think it's interesting because it is twofold. Obviously, you're putting trust into the product maker, whatever that is, or producer of all these vegetables and things. But you also do want to be careful on your own and understand your risk, is what I'm hearing. Understand where you sort of fit in there, and if you need to be extra careful, in some of the things you're eating. I guess just going forward, is it something we're talking about millions of products, right, of Boar's Head, but there are millions of products that are going around in grocery stores where they're not having an issue. So this, in general, this recall, while it raises red flags for Boar's Head, It's not saying don't trust your local grocer, don't trust your local products that you're eating every day.
Right, absolutely. I mean, food is important, and one of the biggest fear in coming years is the shortage of food. Uh, Globally, there will be shortages of food, and so uh, we have to trust our food supply chain. And it is not that they are not taking the correct measures, and we can still go to the grocery store and consider that they have been tested, they have been following proper process of pathogen testing. And so I wouldn't say that there is a concern here. It is one of those things that we cannot control. And so vulnerable population, susceptible population, like pregnant women, they say are 20 times more susceptible to listeria. And so in that risk group, they are recommended not to consume ready-to-eat meat, not to consume unpasteurized milk, not to consume unpasteurized cheese, queso fresco. And so that is some of the precautionary measures that we can take to make sure that it does not come from the food to the human system. Uh, and regular healthy people, they will clear it up, but our food is safe. And as soon as the industry knows it, this time it has been 700 million pounds of recall. The industry is, of course, facing a lot of financial uh, problems with all this outbreak, but still they have recalled it. So, and they are most likely cooperating with the USDA, FDA agencies to make sure that it does not get to more grocery stores and infects more people.
Right, and they're going to have to sort of gain that trust back, I imagine, as the fall hits and as they sort of are allowed to start again selling their products. We don't have time to get into this, but, you talking about, types of milk and things, the raw milk and some of these raw options are kind of trending right now. At least it seems that way, with people talking about the benefits of things. So I know we don't have time to get into that, but I think that is really interesting and worth, I guess the question is that checking with your doctor? Is that checking with experts like you in biological sciences about what really these products are? Obviously not listening to everyone online, but finding trusted sources to talk about, what products are okay for you.
Well, if you are amongst one of those population, that is it is concerning.
Right.
And if you're a normal, healthy individual, I do not think so that there is a concern. But if you are in those vulnerable population, like I mentioned, young, elderly, immunocompromised, or pregnant, that is when the doctor is the best source to go to and find out what food is what we can make sure not to consume to prevent these diseases. We also have to understand that some of these pathogens don't have a vaccine. If, for example, Listeria doesn't have a vaccine, and so there's no other preventive measures that one can take other than not consuming high risk foods for high risk population. But I think regular healthy individuals do not have to worry. And if the immune system is healthy, our immune system is enough to fight, even in case we get this pathogen.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Julia, thank you so much for talking about this. I know that we're just skimming the surface of sort of what people need to know about this. But again, I do want to highlight, obviously, this is not all deli products. This is just Boar's Head and the specific recall. The CDC has more information that I've linked in the link on wavy.com and YouTube, where you can find out more about the specifics and the sell-by dates and sort of what's happening in those particular areas. You can also find out about other recalls. But thank you so much for explaining to us those groups to watch out for. You talked about, the survivability of Listeria, and also talked about, people and sort of the process that the U.S. goes through to make sure that we're safe as consumers. So I appreciate all of your insight this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Absolutely. And for anyone watching, please head over to wavy.com. We have a full list that's updated of the latest recall information, what you need to know, symptoms, and more. So please head over to wavy.com. Thank you again.
Thank you.